As far as we know, the Leica M11 lineup is completely wrapped up. We've got the original M11, the M11 monochrome, the M11P, the M11D, and the newly released M11 black paint. I get this message pretty often, and just recently it came again, and it was, Dave, if you were buying a Leica M11 today from the lineup, which one would you get? And the first thought that always comes to mind is, had my M10R not broken a year and a half ago, would I have ever even gotten an M11? Well, yeah, I think I would have, and there are so many things I love about this camera that I've talked about before. I'll just link it above. But today I want to share with you a few things that have been a challenge for me about the M11 and why I probably would not have bought this camera if I was buying one today. But before I do that, if this is your first time here, my name's Dave. I'm a photographer and videographer from the Bay Area of California. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. I post 2 videos a week unless something goes horribly wrong. Okay, let's talk about the M11's colors. In 2024, I wrapped a project on the Northern Plains that I've been working on for quite a while. I'm going to share more details about this project in a later video in early 2025, but I am going to give you a little information on it right now because it's going to contextualize what I'm going to tell you. The Northern Plains were the final part of America to be settled, and for like many, many years, people passed through the Northern Plains traveling west, but people didn't really stay there until the late 1800s and early 1900s. Now, there were a lot of reasons for this, but primarily a large reason was the ongoing conflicts between the indigenous people and the settlers that were passing through. But these lands were eventually settled by a generation of people, and that generation had children who started businesses and built homes and formed towns and had schools and just really had a life that they created in the early 1900s through the 1950s. But as the generations kept going on, more and more people left this area. Today in the Northern Plains, there are numerous homes and businesses and schools and even entire towns that have just been walked away from. So this project that I'm working on is documenting that exodus and what was left behind. Now, I started photographing this area in 2009, but this past year I went back and tried to get some really key specific photos on medium format and 35mm film, but I also brought my M11 to get a digital copy of all the photos that I was making. Now, I have always noticed that the M11 has a pretty heavy magenta shift compared to the M10R that I had before and the M10 before that. But that became incredibly evident as I worked on this project from the Northern Plains. So let's take this photo for example. At first, this photo looks fairly normal and maybe you don't notice the magenta shift in the color palette. But this photo has an incredible magenta shift. First, let's take a look at the white balance numbers. I shoot all of my photos that are outdoors at 5200K, but look at the tint, it's at plus 26, and that's right out of the camera. To remove this magenta shift, I have found that somewhere between 0 and positive 10 is necessary to get this photo to look a little more natural and normal. So how did I arrive at this? Let me show you. So here's this photo with the white balance set at plus 10 on the tint, not plus 26, which is what came out of the camera. On Lightroom, let's change the background color to light gray, since that is what is closest to the clouds. And now let's zoom in on the clouds. Here is our light gray on the right, and here you can see the color tone of the clouds on the left. Now I'm going to put these colors back to what came out of the camera, the plus 26 on the tint. And there you go. This is a major magenta shift. I could even bring the tint down to 0 and it still looks more normal and natural than what came out of the camera initially. And now let's look at the entire photo at plus 10 on the tint, not plus 26, which is what came out of the camera, and let's add the plus 26 back. And you can see by default, this is a heavily magenta photo. My overall point is this: if you shoot any camera from the M11 line, you are likely dealing with a major magenta shift. One suggestion if you shoot in natural lighting is to simply change the white balance in Lightroom to daylight, because Lightroom's daylight white balance is 5500K and plus 10 on the tint. So that right there is going to fix the magenta shift, and then you can, finesse your white balance to your liking. The easiest way to do this is to build a preset that simply is one click and changes that white balance. You can do that by setting your white balance on your raw photo to daylight, then going and clicking your preset menu and hitting plus to add a preset, and add a preset like white balance fix, whatever you want to name it, and only add the white balance change to that preset's properties. And now you can use any preset you want, but if you click the one that you just made, it'll change that white balance. And maybe you do that first and apply it on your import, or it's like the first thing that you do. Whatever it is, if you shoot an M11, you are dealing with magenta shift, and you probably want to fix it unless you like it. I mean, if you like the magenta shift, then rock on, do your thing. And if you want the very best colors on your Leica M11 files, of course, check out verygoodpresets.com. Now, I may be a little biased because it's my shop, but I can sponsor my own videos, right? Verygoodpresets.com. Grab some very good colors. And by the way, a lot of these presets fix this problem. Okay, so now let's talk about internal memory, because the Leica M11 was the very first M Leica to give us internal storage. Now, the SD card workflow is deeply ingrained in us, but let me tell you why this is a big deal and how to properly use it. The internal memory is hardwired, obviously, to the camera's system overall. When we shoot to an SD card, there's going to be a buffer, which is determined by the write speed of the SD card, as well as the write speed plays a huge role in the speed in which we can bust off photos. When we use the internal memory, we simply remove that, and we're shooting at the camera's full designed capacity without the limitations of even the fastest SD cards. Shooting to the internal memory and not to an SD card is going to give you the lowest possible buffer and the highest possible write speeds. Also, when you shoot on the internal memory, you are shooting to the most reliable system you can shoot to. So with that said, here's what your workflow with the internal memory should be. You could go out without an SD card and just shoot all day to the internal memory, or put the SD card in, but still only shoot to the internal memory. When you are finished shooting and you're ready to import those photos to Lightroom or Capture One or whatever you use, simply go into the storage menu on the M11 and transfer the storage from the internal memory to your newly formatted SD card. And this is just going to copy everything that's on the internal memory to the SD card. And now at this point, you're able to take that card and get back into the workflow you already know. You pop it in and you import it. Now on the OG M11, which is what I have, there are 64 gigabytes of internal memory built in on this camera. But on the M11M, M11P, M11D, there are 256 gigabytes built in to the internal memory. And that is a massive increase from 64, and I was really bummed that the new M11 Black paint did not follow suit and continues to use 64 gigabytes of internal memory. Having robust internal storage like 256 or even 128, I mean, that's the kind of cards that I use. I use 128 gigabyte SD cards. Having that kind of internal storage allows you to just shoot longer and longer. This 128 gigabyte card will get me through a day or multiple days of shooting anything that I do for work. But 64 gigabytes feels a little small and a little risky, because 64 gigabytes of storage represents about 1,000 photos. And I know that feels like a lot, and maybe it is a whole lot, but there are plenty of times where I've shot 1,000 photos off in a full day session or over like a 2-day window, and 64 simply would not be enough for that. Leica M's are not just hobby or vacation cameras. They are meant to be working cameras as well, and I feel like working photographers just need as much space as possible, which is why in the P they increased it to 256, and also in the M and in the D, and you get it. I mean, this is why they built in more, because they made a working camera. But on the original M11, that 64 kind of feels like a limitation. And as more cameras start to move in this direction of using internal storage, I know like Hasselblad does this, Leica will continue to expand this. It's just going to get better and better and more exciting and give you way more room to get work done. Okay, so let's talk about the design for just a moment. I think the M11 is a fantastic and refined M experience. I mean, I love the way the battery is on this camera. I thought I would hate it because I like the classic style of the M10R, M10 line. But at the end of the day, this is incredibly fast and efficient, and I think it was a good call. So I'm a huge fan of this design now. Wasn't in the beginning, but I am now. But I still have the same gripe that I had about prior versions of the M as well, and that is this ISO dial right here. I don't know if it's just my copy or if this is true across every M11 camera. Now, my dial takes a tremendous amount of pressure to pop up, and I really wish they would have made the ISO dial a click dial like this one is. Instead, we have to pop it up, and then we can turn it and adjust it. Which, when you're shooting and you want to quickly change your ISO, it's just literally just hurt myself with it. You have to pop it up, turn it, adjust it, versus just, quickly spinning it like that. And I know some people will set this dial in the back for their ISO, and I've got a friend who actually never pushes his down. Oh my gosh. He would just leave his up like this and go all day long shooting, but that just feels, I don't know, not elegant enough to be on a Leica. I appreciate that the M10D did away with this and put it on the back, but that came at the cost of the screen, and I just would love to see a solution where this is just a click dial. But I mean, I'm kind of nitpicking because other than that, I think the M11 experience is incredible, and it is an M. It is the same experience we know and love across many generations of M cameras. The only other thing about the OG M11 that I just never loved, and this is obviously true of any camera, I just like a blacked out camera. I didn't love the red logo on here. Every other camera in the M11 line has ditched the red logo and gone with their traditional screw, but the M11, the original one, has the red Leica logo. Originally, I had covered this logo with a little sticker, which I have linked below. It's funny because that link below is an Amazon affiliate link, and that has been the largest affiliate link purchase I have had. I mean, it's generated like so much because so many people have bought that cheap sticker pack to use here. But I ended up removing the sticker, and I got a 10mm brass disc off Etsy, a pack of like 30 for 10 bucks. I painted it matte black and I popped it on here. It's easy enough to remove the logo. They're meant to be removed to get to a little calibration adjustment under there. But I put that little brass disc here and it's been great. It's starting to rub the paint off. I need to probably fix the paint, but it's been a very elegant solution. And I just like a blacked out camera, and I appreciate that the entire M11 lineup, other than this camera, is blacked out. I just find those cameras more elegant overall in their design than the original M11. So as I am asked what M11 from Leica's M11 lineup would I recommend, it wouldn't be this one. It wouldn't be the original M11. I would actually recommend the M11P. It is the most elegant design, and it has 256 gigabytes of internal storage, which means that workflow that I described earlier, you could maximize it and never have a single bit of downtime because you have plenty of room to shoot and you've got a very elegant camera. And the only thing that would have changed my mind on that is if the glossy black paint version would have had the 256 gigabytes of internal storage as well, then I would recommend that one because it'll age and become your camera, like accustomed to you and how you used it, versus like these other M11, they'll never like age. They'll always look the same. Now, I'm a working photographer, and as a business owner, it makes zero sense for me to trade up to any other version of the M11 because the image quality is going to be exactly the same. It is the same camera other than design and internal storage, and of course, like the content authentication, which is a different thing for a different conversation. But for me, it just makes zero sense to trade up to any other M11 camera because I have one that's going to make the same type of images and do the same kind of work. I imagine my next Leica camera will be an M12P in like 4 or 5 years, but only if they don't put an EVF in it. Like, please God, don't let them put an EVF in the M. But I'm excited about the future development and where it's going. I'm excited about more internal memory, and obviously I would just love a blacked out camera with that top script, but we're content and happy where we are. So which M is the right one for you? Let me know in the comments below. And also, if you have an M11, like any of them from the lineup, are you experiencing this magenta shift, or is it totally in my imagination? I don't think it is, but I would love to hear from you if you feel like the M11 has a magenta shift. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.